Hello and welcome. Today I want to take you to a world that we often take for granted, but without which it would be impossible to communicate in many contexts. I am talking about translation and interpreting. It's not just about saying the same things in another language. Translating means negotiating meanings, deciding what to say and what not, sometimes even saving a life. The interpreter, then, is much more than a vehicle. It is the voice of those who cannot speak for themselves, the filter of emotions, the guardian of trust. In this video I will tell you about the differences between translation and interpreting, their evolution, ethical responsibilities, the challenges of artificial intelligence, and yes, even how cinema has told these complex and fascinating worlds. Ready? Let's start. Many people think that translating and interpreting are the same thing, but in reality, they are two different professions, each with its own timing, tools, and specific skills. A translator works with written texts. They can reflect, research, and revise. They must have a deep knowledge of the language, but also of the context, culture, and style. A translator doesn't translate words, they convey meanings, respect the tone, intent, and nuances. An interpreter, on the other hand, works with spoken language in real time. There's no room for revision, they must listen, understand, remember, and reformulate instantly. It requires quick thinking, memory, stress management, and a great deal of empathy. In short, the translator works with paper, the interpreter with breath. But both hold the key to connecting different worlds. You may not know this, but interpreting is an ancient practice. As early as ancient Egypt, there were individuals who facilitated communication between peoples. In ancient Rome, many interpreters were slaves or prisoners, but they still performed essential functions. In the 20th century, the modern profession was born, beginning with the Paris Peace Conference in 1919. After World War II, simultaneous interpreting was introduced at the Nuremberg trials, with headsets, microphones, and soundproof booths. Today, there are several types of interpreting. Simultaneous interpreting, where speech is translated in real time from a booth. Consecutive interpreting, where the interpreter listens, takes notes, and then delivers the speech. Liaison interpreting, used in small, informal settings, often involving cultural mediation as well. Whispered interpreting, where the interpreter whispers into the listener's ear. Relay interpreting, which uses a pivot language when no direct language pair is available. Remote interpreting, which takes place through digital platforms. Being an interpreter means making responsible choices. That's why a code of ethics exists, a moral compass that guides every professional in the field of linguistic mediation. Every word spoken is not their own, but must faithfully reflect the original, even if it's harsh or uncomfortable. Among the core principles are fidelity and accuracy, absolute confidentiality, impartiality, technical and subject matter preparation, professionalism and consistency in behavior. A real-life example. The episode during the press conference between Meloni and Trump. The interpreter hesitated, remained silent for too long, and showed emotion. The Prime Minister had to translate for herself, live, on a global stage. A delicate moment that highlights just how hard it is to stay composed and follow the code under intense pressure. The code of ethics is a high ideal, but everyday challenges often put it to the test. The interpreter constantly decides how and how much to convey, maintaining a delicate balance between language, ethics, and humanity. We live in an era where technology promises to replace everything, including interpreters. But can it really? AI is everywhere: DeepL, Google Translate, automated simultaneous interpreting tools. In certain contexts, they're fast and cost-effective tools. But be careful, translating words is not enough. One must grasp emotions, tone, and culture. This is where the theory of mind comes into play, the ability to understand what others are feeling or thinking. AI lacks empathy. It can produce a grammatically correct sentence but doesn't know whether that sentence is appropriate, respectful, or potentially harmful. Moreover, there's the risk of bias. These systems are trained on data that may contain prejudices. This means AI can subtly distort the message, even unintentionally. And let's not forget, even human interpreters can manipulate, consciously or unconsciously. A tone, a missing word, or a changed expression can shift the meaning entirely. So the real question isn't just, can AI replace humans, but rather, do we trust it to? And with what consequences? The answer, at least for now, is clear: machines can support us. But the heart of mediation remains deeply human. Cinema has captured the challenges of translation like few other art forms. In Lost in Translation, language is both a barrier and a bridge. The cultural gap between the protagonists and Japan becomes the backdrop for an intimate bond built on silence and glances. In Arrival, translation means changing one's very perception of time. Louise, the linguist protagonist, doesn't just communicate, she transforms, thanks to the alien language. In Babel, the lack of communication between cultures triggers a chain of tragedies. The film reminds us that speaking is not enough, we must also know how to listen. In The Interpreter, a woman overhears a conversation at the UN and finds herself at the center of a conspiracy. Language becomes power, danger, and survival. In The Translators, a group of translators locked away to work on a manuscript become the protagonists of a psychological thriller where the very concept of fidelity is put to the test. In The Lives of Others, linguistic listening becomes surveillance. A Stasi agent spies on conversations and translates intentions, not to communicate, but to repress. Finally, in Napoli, New York, a police officer acting as an interpreter during the trial of a young girl's sister decides to alter the message to save her from the death penalty, a gesture that defies professional ethics, but in the film becomes a profound act of human justice. These films show that translation is never a neutral act. It means taking a stand, even when pretending not to. In a world full of words but poor in listening, translators and interpreters are fragile yet indispensable bridges. They are not just language experts, they are artisans of dialogue, guardians of trust, facilitators of mutual understanding. Technology can assist, but it cannot replace intention, empathy, or awareness. Because interpreting is not just about understanding. It's about truly listening, even to what is left unsaid. And translating is not about swapping words. It's about conveying entire worlds.